Welcome everyone to the 2022 Australian Open Men's Semi-Final Pre-Match Live. I am Gill Gross. Thanks so much for joining me live on YouTube here as we get set for Rafael Nadal versus Matteo Berrettini in the first semifinal, followed by Daniil Medvedev versus Stefanos Tsitsipas in the second semifinal. Really exciting stuff, and I see right away I have a super chat. What I'm going to do here is answer some of the comments that were left in the YouTube community tab. I will keep an eye on the live chat and get to all of those questions shortly as well. And then at the end, I just want to reiterate my picks for anyone who maybe didn't watch, and my logic, of course, for the picks, for anyone who didn't watch my pre-match videos, my previews. So thank you for the super chat from Racket Talk. Hi, Gill. If Federer won Australian Open 2017 at 35, going through 3 5-setters, there should be no excuses for Medvedev to be able to bring his best. What are your thoughts? I agree with that. I kind of do. We have seen time and time again, if you go through the history of the big three, one of the skills that is required to win majors on a consistent basis is to play long matches and then to show up the next day, actually not the next day, to show up in 2 days and play well. You know, recovery and the ability to string together, especially at the end of the tournament, a couple of long matches, that is a skill that is required, imperative. And sometimes you're going to have runs like Daniil Medvedev had at the US Open where he only dropped 1 set. But guess what? If you're going to rely on that to happen every time, you are not going to rack up the number of majors that you would otherwise. So, you know, fatigue is a tough one for me. I understand, you know, I did read some comments saying, you know, in regards to the Medvedev-Tsitsipas match that I'm not accounting enough for fatigue, and those comments could be right and I could be wrong. We'll just have to see. It's always been a tough one for me when the player doesn't have a lot of history of long matches and I haven't been able to see them recover. So in the case of Daniil Medvedev, I've documented this. He has not played a lot of long matches. The only time he really had a difficult run at a major was the 2019 US Open, and physically he held up so incredibly well in that event. I'm not really going off of that. It was a long time ago, but I didn't feel comfortable really, I don't feel comfortable as far as predictions are concerned to just assume that Medvedev's going to be dead and he's not going to be able to have his best. I'm going to assume, my choice was to assume that he'd be fine, and we'll see what happens. Maybe he's not, and maybe he has trouble recovering. Let's see. Before I get into the comments, I am seeing that the roof is closed. I was actually wondering about that, and I checked the weather before I came on here, and I actually had assumed that the roof wouldn't be closed because the precipitation percentages were kind of low. But I'll take your word for it. If the roof is closed, thanks so much for the super chat, Alex. If the roof is closed, I don't think it's clear who it benefits in Nadal Berrettini, because neither of them like a roof based on history. Neither of them have had a lot of success indoors. I think a lot of that is because I think in Nadal's case, it's been largely about the low bounce and the time of year where indoor tennis is usually played. For Berrettini, I'm not exactly positive because I think his game should be pretty suitable to indoor hard courts, but I think it's unclear. What I do think closing the roof does is I think it slows things down. I do think that when the humidity drops and the temperature drops, it makes for slower conditions. Rafa has said in the past that he prefers his hard courts to be quicker in speed, especially later in his career, and I think that makes a lot of sense. We see how much his serve and his serve +1, his first strike tennis off of his forehand, the effectiveness of that is going to be the number one determining factor of how effective he is. In Berrettini's case, it seems like he's a pretty surface A surface non-dependent, a surface independent. You know, his best surfaces historically, besides the fact that he's made the semifinal now here in Australia and at the U.S. Open, it's been clay and grass. So what do you make of that? What I make of that is with Berrettini's serve and forehand, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because fast conditions, I think that helps his serve. Slow conditions, I think that makes his forehand an even more valuable weapon on the court, and it allows him to run around the backhand more often. So I think it's pretty tough to say. My lean is that slower conditions with the roof closed, maybe a slight lean Berrettini, but I do not have much conviction when I say that. I don't think it's clear who that helps, to be completely honest. In Medvedev Tsitsipas, I think if it slows down, it helps Tsitsipas because it's going to be about, for Tsitsipas, it's going to be about getting into rallies and making returns. So if it slows down, it helps Stefanos, in my opinion. Let me get to some comments that were put in the community tab. So I'm going to put it up on the screen here. The first one is from Jared Gonzalez. And Jared says, are Berrettini's backhand struggles a bit overblown? He has the best slice backhand of the next gen, and his weapons, forehand and serve, make his weaker backhand side more noticeable. Oh, unnoticeable. I mean, is Tsitsipas's backhand really any better than Berrettini's? And Tsitsipas usually gives Nadal trouble despite the backhand. I don't know which part of the question I should address first. I guess I'm going to go with the first. No, let me start with the second part. Tsitsipas's backhand is much better than Berrettini's, in my opinion. Tsitsipas is someone who, if you give him space down the line, he will take it. He will hit a backhand winner down the line. He will force errors with his backhand down the line. He's someone who can do damage off that side. Where Tsitsipas's backhand is not as good is on the return and on defense on really quick courts. Even on clay, the defense is, not even so bad, and the return obviously gets a lot better too. But Berrettini, I can't say his backhand really helps him in any respect other than the slice being oftentimes a really good setup shot for the forehand. I will also compliment Berrettini's backhand and say, unless it's pressured, he usually doesn't miss a ton of routine backhands. But look, Matteo Berrettini doesn't win baseline rallies against the best players in the world, and that is because of his backhand. I do not think the backhand struggles are overblown. I think it's a true weakness. I mean, if Berrettini's backhand was better, if it was as good as, let me try to think of an average backhand here, a middle-of-the-road backhand for a top 20 player. Let's go with, that's tough. Let's go with, I'll just use Tsitsipas. Why not? Because Tsitsipas was in this comment. If Berrettini had Tsitsipas's backhand, he would be a top 5 player, in my opinion. So yeah, I think it's a true weakness. The next one is from Pogos. I'm curious, how do you think Matteo will handle Rafa's forehand? That'll definitely be a part of Rafa's strategy going in. I personally think Matteo will pull out the match because he's beaten so many good players and is one of the most mentally tough players on tour, on top of Rafa not looking particularly healthy and his serve being down in the dumps. Well, Rafa's serve is definitely not down in the dumps. So I would strongly disagree with that. But if Rafa's forehand is too bad a matchup for him, there's not much he'll be able to do. It really depends on that aspect of the match. And then he says, sorry to ramble. So there's the comment right there from Pogos. I appreciate that. I would push back on two things. One, Nadal's backhand, the point you made about, Nadal's serve. I would say Nadal's serve is looking good. I would also push back on the idea that Berrettini has beaten a lot of really good players. Dominic Thiem has been a good matchup for him historically. He's definitely had a winning record against Thiem and done well against him. But if you look at Berrettini's record against top 10 competition, it's 6-15 overall for his career. 2 of those wins are against Khachanov on grass. At the majors, he's 1-8. So look, I really like Berrettini, and I'll be, he can prove me wrong in the next 3 days and he can win the Australian Open, but I don't see him as that player. I see him as someone who, first of all, has done a tremendous job of putting himself in position to win big titles. I see him as a player who it takes an elite player to beat. And if you beat Matteo Berrettini, that is as impressive a win as it comes pretty much on tour. However, I don't see him as a player who is very, very threatening to the best 5 guys, the best 5 or 6 guys on the tour, unless he has a matchup where the return becomes an issue. But the players who can return his serve generally beat him. And that's not a lot of players, but I do think those players have success against him. And, without much exception. You look at Medvedev and Zverev and Nadal and Djokovic, and they beat him. And he normally doesn't really pull off an upset against these guys historically because they return his serve, they drag him into rallies, and then once you get him into rallies, you can get it to his backhand. That's what people, I think, misunderstand about Berrettini is, good luck getting it there on your return games. You're likely not going to be able to get it there unless you're a tremendous returner of serve. Next one is about the conditions and how much it fluctuates in Australia. And I do agree that the Australian Open is probably really up there in terms of how much the conditions can fluctuate a lot faster in the day, a lot slower at night. Let me take a moment here to check the live chat. Thank you for the super chat from Krishna. Appreciate that. I don't want to get into Rafa for the rest of the year yet. Let me go back to the community tab and let's see what else we got in here. What is your feeling on Matteo's movement and backhand? Based on what you've seen, for me, it looks like he's hitting his backhand with a little more depth, even if the power isn't necessarily there. And how do you rate his chances in light of improvement, in light of any improvement in these 2 aspects of his game? I do think Berrettini's backhand has looked relatively good in this tournament for him. And, man, a lot of Berrettini backhand early on here. Lots of Berrettini backhand. And his movement, I can't say that has looked better to me. That's kind of looked the same. I think he's an average mover for his size. And when it comes to handling the Nadal forehand, by the way, the movement is just as big a factor as the backhand because Nadal is not going to look to finish. The majority of Nadal's attempts to finish are actually going to be to Berrettini's forehand, trying to exploit his movement. He's going to look for the backhand to, maybe get those errors, but ultimately he wants those short balls. He wants Berrettini maybe to be forced into slicing it. He wants Berrettini to drop one short. That's why he hits to the backhand. He's not hitting to the backhand to finish. The finishing blow is going to go to the forehand. Nadal using his forehand down the line. Nadal using his inside-out forehand. That's generally where he's going to look to land the finishing blow and hope that Berrettini is also looking to protect his backhand by leaning there and using that kind of knockout punch to the forehand side as almost a surprise tactic within the points, which he'll do on serve as well. He'll serve mostly to the Matteo Berrettini backhand, but when he goes to the forehand, it'll be flatter, it'll be faster, it'll be a surprise, and the effectiveness of that serve is often higher than the effectiveness of Nadal's regular slice serve to the righty backhand. So it's Berrettini's movement that is a problem when it comes to defending against Nadal's forehand aggression. It's not just the backhand, it's backhand and the movement. Could you talk about the doubles semifinal between Kokkinakis Kyrgios and Granollers Ceballos, and what are the chances Kyrgios becomes a slam champion? I'm not going to break down the doubles there, and I only watched the highlights of that. I missed that one. But I mean, it's been certainly eye-opening to see what Nick Kyrgios in this doubles tournament has been able to do in terms of attention on doubles. You know, the crowd has been raucous. I'm interested to see what the crowd is like in the final, because it's an all-Australian final. So, you know, are they going to be as raucous for Kyrgios and Kokkinakis still? You know, I find Kyrgios, and I have issues with Nick in terms of the things that he, certain things off the court that I don't want to get into. It's mostly stuff that has come to light in his personal life that I have an issue with, more so than anything he said in a tennis context. But I do think we can learn so much from Nick Kyrgios. And in terms of the question of if he's good or tennis for bad for tennis, the fact that everybody hates him, you know, the thing is, I think that having people in tennis who people hate, I kind of think that's a good thing. So I think every sport should have some villains. Villains sell. Villains create, you know, excitement. And this is, I don't think that's a hot take. You know, if you hate Nick, that doesn't disprove the fact that he kind of does bring a lot of energy to the sport. You know, that's all. Hello from Australia. Love it. Love from Greece. Love it. Love hearing where you guys are tuning in from. Always very cool. Let me answer this quick from Jasper. The Nadal second serve, what is going on? Are you looking for a tactical adjustment since Berrettini isn't the greatest returner? Well, good question. A couple things are going on the Nadal second serve. One thing is that he's actually hitting it harder. He's averaging over 100 miles per hour on the second serve, which is really cool to see, and it's a very positive thing if he doesn't double fault 11 times. So I actually think that the sample size is a little bit too small right now to make a real judgment on Nadal's second serve. I did lay out the context in my post-match video, which is that Nadal is double faulting more and more, and I thought he double faulted too much last year in 2021. I thought he double faulted too much, obviously, against Denis Shapovalov, and I am slightly concerned about if that gets in his head a little bit on a big point here, if they play a tight match. I do think that is possible, but in general, I think that if this is overall an effort to beef up Nadal's second serve, I think that's a necessary adjustment for the long term. And I think the fact that Nadal's second serve is averaging above 100 miles per hour, I think that is a great thing for Rafael Nadal. And if you're a fan of his, I think you should be really, really happy to see that. Let me go back to the community tab here and see if there's anything else I want to get to. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple here that I'm trying to find one that I think is super duper interesting. Is Berrettini the best hardcourt player in the world right now? I mean, I would like to see him play a fresh Djokovic in 2022 before we have that conversation. You know, in 2021, it was obviously a really great rivalry on hardcourt, and it went both ways, I think, for multiple reasons, but yeah, I think we need to see that match again before we make that kind of declaration. What else do we have? Do you think Nadal shouldn't just attack Matteo's backhand and stay on the baseline, but also attack Matteo's backhand and go often to the net, that way forcing Berrettini not to play too many slices? We know Berrettini has a great slice. P.S. For me, the biggest question is how many inside in, inside out Matteo will be able to play in this match. Well, that's a great comment there from John Bones. John Bones Mahomes. Yeah, that's a great question, and my answer to that is, oh my God, I just totally messed up and I wrongly clicked. So, okay, I won't be able to pull up the comments again on my vMix, I don't think. Anyway, here's the thing. First of all, I don't think Berrettini's going to want to slice. Berrettini will not want to slice in this match because Nadal, because of his racket speed and his footwork, Nadal is amazing against slice. And Berrettini, you saw against Alcaraz, he understands when he shouldn't slice. Against Carlos, he didn't slice very much at all. Now, if he does slice, he wants to get it to the backhand, but against a righty, that's a lot easier. Against a lefty, he needs to slice down the line, and I've talked about that before. I don't want to get into the tactical nuances of this, but it's harder for a righty to slice to a lefty backhand. Therefore, I don't think the slice is that big a factor. However, the other part of that comment is, should Nadal go to net? Should Nadal approach Berrettini's backhand? Yes, he 100% and absolutely should, and I expect he will. One of my favorite Rafa Nadal matches ever in terms of admiration for him was his win against Del Potro, I believe in the quarterfinals, Wimbledon 2018, but it might have been 19. No, it might have been the semis. Crap. Anyway, Nadal Del Potro deep in Wimbledon. And Nadal, Del Potro played amazing in that match, and I'm sure someone in the live chat is going to tell me what match I'm thinking of. But Nadal, I mean, Del Potro was playing so well in that match that Nadal looked to be in a little bit of trouble. All he did in that match to really turn the tides is approach Del Potro's backhand. And Del Potro was in a phase where his left wrist wasn't feeling great and he was slicing the backhand a lot. But we know how grass courts really reward a good slice, and how on grass, if you stay back and someone's slicing, it's very difficult to really make headway anyway. So Nadal completely adjusted, and he just moved. He came in on Del Potro's backhand. He served and volleyed on the ad side. I see people in the chat are saying quarterfinals 2018. And yeah, that was an unbelievable match where Nadal just leaned very, very hard on his net play and his tactical guile. And I think that might be a scenario in this match where if Rafa feels uncomfortable, if he feels like he's in some trouble, that might be a plan C for him. You know, maybe not a plan B, but maybe a plan C, just to, you know, serve volley a lot and to approach the Berrettini backhand as much as possible. I do see a comment about this being an asterisk slam. I will cover that after the tournament. I'm going to just ignore that entire narrative until the tournament is over. And, of course, you know, that is going to be something that will be addressed. I'll address it, and I'll give my thoughts on it at some point. Why is the match in the afternoon from Rachit, or... Yeah, sorry if I mispronounced it. Well, I think in best of 5, the matches would go really, really late if they started at night. To get 2 best of 5 matches in, I think you have to start it a little bit earlier than the women started. So it's not that hot and the roof is closed. Yeah, so you know, to me the conditions are going to be slower. And if you weren't with me at the top, I don't think it's clear who that's going to benefit. And at the end of the day, I think we still are going to have, you know, a lot of the same factors dictating this match. But all things considered, it's imperative that Nadal is able to get through the court, hit through the court easily with his forehand. And obviously for Berrettini too. But Berrettini, I think, pretty much doesn't really matter the court surface. He's going to do it no matter what. And Nadal will probably do it as well, but I think that, I mean, Nadal has said that he prefers it a little bit speedier on hard court. I take his word for that, but I don't have much of a conviction here on the roof and who it helps. You know, sometimes you just gotta see how it plays out. But I mean, all I'll say is I do think it slows it down. That's all I can really say. I believe it slows it down. And again, in terms of results, I mean, obviously Nadal's worst surface is indoor hard court throughout his career. Berrettini hasn't been good on indoor hard court either. And I don't have stats for that, but I'm just going off my memory really, and I don't think it's been a good surface for him either. So we'll just have to see. Thanks, Guru. Who do you think will finish the match with a higher first serve win percentage? I vote Rafa, even though his serve is ostensibly worse. Awesome question. I think it could be Rafa too. I laid out, the number one thing that I laid out in the preview was Berrettini's return conundrum. What is Berrettini going to do with his backhand return? But in all honesty, I think first serves won. I think it'll be pretty close. I would predict that both players win around 80%. It's the second serve win percentage that I think Nadal can return Berrettini's second serve very effectively, potentially. And I think Berrettini, perhaps, and this has been his problem, in my opinion, against like Djokovic, for example, I think Berrettini might have an issue returning the second serve offensively. And that's what you got to do. If you're Matteo Berrettini against an elite baseliner, the only way you have an advantage is if you return offensively, because in neutral isn't good enough. Neutral isn't good enough against an elite baseliner if you're Matteo Berrettini. Because if you took away the serve and you played let's just feed it and play baseline points with Matteo Berrettini and Nadal, who would win? Nadal, because of the backhand and because of the movement, mainly for Berrettini. It's too exploitable and Nadal would win. So what Berrettini usually does on return is he hits a good return and gets to neutral. Against Nadal, he needs to be offensive off the backhand on the return. Or he needs to run around and hit a forehand, which is very hard with the lefty spin. So I don't see what he does on second serve return, and that's the key to the match for me. If he reinvents the wheel, if he does something that I haven't seen him do before, maybe he backs up and hits more forehands on the second serve return. Maybe he tries something. But from what I have seen, I don't know what he's going to do to be offensive on the second serve return, and I believe he has to. Meanwhile, for Nadal, I really like what I've seen from Nadal on his second serve return, taking it early. And that's my main reason for going with Nadal in 4 when I picked this match. To answer our model, who's asking me how I think this match being indoors will affect things, I'm not quite sure. I think it's going to slow things down. I think Nadal and Berrettini have had equally underwhelming records on indoor hard court relative to their success in other conditions, and I don't think it's very clear how the court speed slowing down is going to affect this matchup. So it's a wait and see game for me. Two more minutes. I'm going to wrap things up here, actually in one more minute, because I can't miss any of this match, of course. I'm going to try to get the post-match video up between the semifinals. So Nadal Berrettini post-match analysis. I'm going to try to get it up before Medvedev and Tsitsipas begin. That's my goal. Jasper, I will, if you can DM me on Twitter, if you have a Twitter, or if you put the link, can you put the, it's a good point. You can also email me somewhere on my YouTube channel. I don't want to put it in the chat, but somewhere on my YouTube channel, you can find my email. All right. It is 7:30. This has been fun. I appreciate everybody who's come in and joined me. I will be staying up for both matches. I really appreciate all the kind comments from everyone, and I'll talk to you before the final as well. Same time, same place, 30 minutes before walkouts. Enjoy the matches, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.